Our Old Testament reading this morning comes from chapters 1 and 2 from the book of Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it and to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This is also vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart for which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. But this also is vanity. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also, I saw, is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
As mentioned earlier in our announcements this morning, earlier this month I was able to go to the National Youth Gathering with a number of our high schoolers and some of our parents. And so we traveled all the way down to Houston, Texas for a week, and the gathering creates all of these amazing opportunities for the kids and all the people who are there. And it's structured in this great way so that during the day, the kids have all sorts of opportunities to either go and hear speakers on this topic or that topic. They get to pick and choose what they want to go hear about and what they want to go learn about. So that's during the day, but then during the evening, it's different because we have what's called our mass event. It's called the mass event not because it's a throwback to our Catholic roots, but it's the mass event in the sense that it's the mass of us. It's all of us all together, one place at one time. And so for us, in the evenings, we were all at Minute Maid Park where the Houston Astros played their baseball games. We had 20,000 high schoolers in one place at one time, all learning, all praising. It was truly an amazing experience for all the people who were there. And in these mass events, the band comes out and the band plays, and it sounds amazing, and we're all praising. And then you have somebody who comes out and they give their story, their testimony. They give us some kind of message or sermon for the night. But there's always a theme for each night, and the theme is supported by a couple of different things. The music and the speaker, but also by these different skits or videos. And on the second night, they came out and they had this skit that just really, really grabbed me. It was so interesting. It really, really kept my attention, and it really got me thinking. And in this skit, it opened like this. You have a tour guide and a tour group. And the tour guide comes out and he says, "Welcome to the new creation. I'm your tour guide. I'm going to be the one showing you around." He's saying, that new creation, the new earth, new heavens, new earth that God promised us through Jesus, you're standing in it now. And I'm going to show you around. And so he's taking them on this tour, and they're walking around, and they're noticing, things are really, really familiar. But there are some things that are just like a little bit different. And so as they're going, somebody in the back raises their hand, and they're like, "Excuse me, I noticed there are no hospitals. What happened to all the hospitals?" And so the tour guide kind of stops, and he smirks, and he says, "Well, in this new creation, there's no sickness, and there's no disease, so there's no need for any hospitals. So we took all the hospitals, and we turned them into trampoline houses for the kids." And as the skit goes on, they talk about all these other funny little differences that they've made up. But the whole idea really got me interested. What would it be like to be on that tour? What's it going to be like to be on that tour? If you were to be able to, hop on the tour bus and go all the way around the new creation, what are the things that we're going to see? For example, what are the roads going to be like in this new creation? Because I, for one, would just love it if there was no traffic. I wish no traffic in the new creation. Or what about the internet? What's the internet going to be like in the new creation? Are all the bad things or all the negative things going to be erased? Are we going to go back to having, just pictures of babies and puppies and all these happy things? Or will we have any need for the internet at all? Maybe the internet just won't be there because we simply just don't need it. And the one I want to talk about today is this. If you were to drive out into the suburbs, if you were to be told, hey, we're on your way to your eternal home now, what's that going to be like? What is your house in this new creation going to look like? Now, I'm just going to speak for myself because for the longest time, when I have pictured my eternal home, I have pictured this just grand palace. It's got everything. In my eternal home, you name it, I have it. It's got the huge yard. And in this yard, you've got the Olympic-sized swimming pool, you've got the diving board, you've got the slides, you've got fountains, you've got waterfalls, you've got those color-changing lights for the nighttime. And then right next to this beautiful pool, that's where you have the full basketball court. So you can just, get a game of pickup basketball going anytime you want. And then you head inside and you walk into those beautiful sliding doors. And of course, you've got the wonderful kitchen on the left. But then you go down into the basement. And the basement has the movie room. And the movie room is not just a movie room. The movie room is a full-on theater. It's got the theater chairs, it's got the popcorn machine, it's got everything. Now let's say I take you back upstairs, I give you the tour. Every room in this house just beautifully put together. It's perfect. So that way when I'm there, I just feel like I'm living in an HGTV show. It's beautiful, it's perfect. Every window has a different scenic view. If you walk by the window on this side of the house, maybe you're getting like the mountain range. If you walk past a window on this side of the house, maybe you're getting like the babbling brook or whatever it is. You name it, in my eternal home, I have got it. But the readings today make me think that maybe I've got that wrong. And the readings today have me thinking if these material things shouldn't matter to us now, maybe they're not going to matter to us all that much in the new creation either. You see, while I have been picturing this heavenly mansion for my eternal home, what if when you get to that new creation, what if your home looks more like this? What if your heavenly home is actually a tiny house? Raise your hand. Have you ever seen one of these tiny houses before? Maybe you've seen them on TV. There are a lot of TV shows. Now, if you're not familiar with the tiny house movement, tiny houses are becoming really popular for a couple different reasons, especially among younger generations who, they don't want the upkeep of a large house. They don't want the larger mortgage payment on the large house, and maybe they want the flexibility to travel around and have all these different experiences. So they're becoming a lot more popular. And so you'll see them out on the road, as RVs or with wheels, people towing them with their trucks. A tiny house is roughly 225 square feet on average. 225 square feet. The average normal size house is about 1,800 square feet, which means if you were to move into a tiny house right now, it would be roughly 1/8 the size of the house that you're coming from. What if you had to get rid of 7/8 of your possessions? Would that be hard? I think that it would be very, very, very hard. And these tiny houses, there are all sorts of TV shows on them, and you've got shows where it's like house hunters, where they're going looking at 3 different tiny houses, and they go and tour them, or it's videos of them like building their own tiny home. And I have to be honest, those are just the most frustrating TV shows to watch. They are so hard to watch, because in these shows, it always seems like it goes the exact same. It's like a single guy who's like 6'5", and he loves mountain biking, and he's got like 6 mountain bikes, and he's got to make sure that this tiny house somehow has room for 6 mountain bikes. And they show him, crawling up into the loft of this tiny house, because most of these have lofts where you climb a ladder and then you crawl into your bed. And in every episode, you have the people who go, they climb up the ladder into the loft and they like wiggle into bed the best they can, and then they, lay down and the ceiling is like 6 inches above their head. And then they always say something along the lines of, "Wow, I can't believe how much room is in here. I can't believe how much storage space I actually had. I wasn't expecting that." And it's so frustrating because it just seems so impractical. You watch these episodes and I think, how could these people be so happy with so little? Now, maybe those people would, flip that on us and come back to us and ask the question, what makes you think that you're so much happier with so much more? And this question of, is less really more? That's the question that Solomon sets out to answer for us in our reading from Ecclesiastes. And I love how Solomon lays this out because right when he gets into his book, he tells us exactly what he thinks right at the beginning. Here's how he starts. He says, "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher," referring to Solomon. "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Now, when we hear that word vanity, we probably are thinking about like a self-love, like, look how great this is for me, like everything should be about me. You might think about that really great oldie song, "You're So Vain." You probably think this song is about you. And to an extent, that definition of vanity does work here because, we do go about life thinking like, we're so vain, we definitely think this life is about us. Right? So it does make sense to an extent. But the word that Solomon is using here, it refers to a passing breath. When he says vanity, he's talking about a passing breath. So he says, passing breath of passing breath, all is a passing breath. And then he goes on in verses 12, 13, and 14, and he explains why he says that. He says, "I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after the wind." And it probably will help us to understand who's saying this. You've got Solomon. Solomon is our author. King Solomon, the son of King David. So Solomon is the king of Israel. He's got all of this power. He's got all of this authority. But what is it that Solomon is best known for? His wisdom. So not only does he have all of the power and all of the authority, but he's got all of the wisdom to be able to know and understand the best way to use his power and his authority. So here you've got the king of Israel, the person who truly can say they can do just about whatever they want. And Solomon has. He's gone out. He's gained all these things for himself. He's had all these different experiences. And he comes back and he says, "I've seen everything. I've done everything. And it's all just a passing breath." And then he gets into chapter 2 and he gives a really great example of why he means this. A very pointed and specific example. He talks about his kingdom. And he talks about in chapter 2 how hard he has worked for his kingdom, how he's used his wisdom to expand the kingdom, to expand his authority, to expand the reach of the kingdom, to expand his wealth, and to gain all of these possessions for himself. But to what end? Because eventually Solomon's going to pass on, and all of these things that he has gained for himself, they're not going to go with him. He says, they're not going to come with me when I go. They're just going to go on to the next guy. And who knows if that guy worked as hard as I worked for the things that I have now. Who knows if that person is going to use all of these things to the extent that I have used them now. So he calls it all vanity. He calls it all a passing breath, and he uses this chasing after the wind. He says the more we're chasing after all of these earthly things, the more we're reaching and trying to grab and hold on to something that we will never be able to grab and hold on to forever. Now, the more you get into Solomon and what Solomon is saying, the more you kind of come to this realization that Solomon is a real bummer. He is just a real bummer. It's hard to get into what he's saying because it's sad, but it's true. And the message that Solomon has for us, it has always been relevant. It's always been important. It's always been meaningful. But doesn't it feel a little bit pointed? Doesn't it feel a little bit too close to home for us today? as Americans living in the 21st century. And I know that's harsh, but let me explain what I mean. There are two things that we love. The first thing that we love is our stuff. We love our stuff so much that when we receive new things, it's really hard to get rid of the old things. And I understand not everyone does this, but you know when you drive anywhere on the south side for about 5 minutes, you'll pass at least 3 different self-storage places. Because when we get new stuff, we don't want to get rid of our old stuff. We're going to put it in self-storage because who knows, in a couple of years, we might need that thing that we haven't used in the last 5 years. Self-storage units, it's a $40 billion industry a year. And we make it that because we love our stuff, because we find meaning in our stuff. The first thing we love is our stuff. The second thing that we love is our image. And way too often, we are just way too concerned with the way that others view us. And we have this innate thirst for approval or admiration where we feel like we have to have all of these things. We have to have all of these possessions, all of these items. We have to go and have all of these different experiences so that when people look at us, they think, man, look at that person. That person has it all. That person is living the life. That person has everything that they could ever want or ask for. We love our stuff. We love our image. And our obsession with these things, with things like our stuff and with our image, it does something really dangerous. It does something really, really scary. It does something deadly. Our obsession with our stuff, our obsession with our image, it pushes us into our grave. That's hard to hear. Our obsession with our stuff, it pushes us into our grave because the more we love the things of this world now, the less we are loving the things of eternity. All of these things that we try to collect for ourselves now, they have never made us any kind of eternal promise. All of these things and experiences that we try to collect for ourselves now, they have never once ever been able to love us back. Never have they made us an eternal promise. Never have they ever been able to love us back. All of these things, just like Solomon said, when we go, they're not coming with us. So he says they're vanity. They're a passing breath. They're a chasing after the wind. They push us into the grave, and never once have they made us any promise about ever trying to pull us out of it. And there's only one person who can do that. There's only one person who can pull us out of the grave that our own vanity has pushed us into, and his name is Jesus Christ. And while life with Jesus is nothing but vanity, Solomon tells us that life with him, life in relationship with him, seeing everything that we have in relationship with Jesus, that is where our eternal joy comes from. Here's what Solomon says about this in verses 24 and 25. He says, "There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil." What's your toil? Your toil is your work, it's your lot in life, it's the life that you're living. There's nothing better for a person that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? See, our problem is not that we fill our house. It's not that we fill our houses with all of these different material possessions. It's not that we fill our Facebook with pictures of all the amazing things that we're doing. The problem is that we see all of these things outside of our relationship with Jesus. All these things that we have, all the things that we've been given, they can either be a status symbol for how well off we're doing so that other people can look at us and see how much we have, how much we've been able to do, and they can say, wow, that person has it all. Or we can see these things that God has given us in relationship to him and say, man, I have been blessed. God has given me some amazing things, and he's put those in my life so that way I can go out into the world and I can use those to be a blessing to somebody else. I can use all these material things that God has given me in order to make an eternal difference in the life of somebody else. That's not vanity. That's doing the work of Jesus. Now, I don't know if we're all going to be in tiny houses in heaven, but I do know that putting all of our trust, all of our faith, all of our hope, and all the stuff that we use to fill our big houses now is not going to help us get to our eternal home to find out. And I'm not saying that after the service is over that you need to, rush out the door to go put your house on the market, but I do think that it would be an important thing for us to do, to go home and look around at our possessions and ask ourselves as we look around, what is it that I'm expecting all these things to do for me? What is it that I think that all of these things can do for me? Why do I have all of these things? What are these things going to do for me? Because they are never going to pull you out of the grave. They're never going to pull you into eternal life. That is the work that only Jesus can do. That is the work that only Jesus has done. That is the work that Jesus has done specifically for each and every one of you here. That is where our hope comes from. That is where our joy comes from. That is where our purpose and our meaning comes from. Having a relationship with Jesus, seeing everything that we have within that relationship with him as well. So with that, I invite you to join me for prayer. Jesus, while our ways and our wants only ever push us into the grave, you pull us out of it. Help us to put aside our desire for the things of this world and set our eyes on your eternal and life-giving gifts and promises. In your name we pray. Amen.